This is Lewis Hart for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and Forge Irish Stout. Delighted to be joined with Dan Rafael. I mean, we've just come off the back of an amazing night in the Barclays Centre, quite incredible night in the Barclays Centre. We'll get onto that in a minute, but other than that, how are things? How are you doing?
Things are good. That was one heck of a fight, wasn't it?
Absolutely, for sure, for sure. And I was definitely blessed to be there to see it in person. Obviously, Ryan Garcia defeats Devin Haney by majority decision on Saturday night. It's been a couple days now, sort of time to digest the fight, what happened. Suppose from your opinion, now the dust has settled, I guess. What did you make of the fight on Saturday night?
Well, first and foremost, it was a heck of a fight. I mean, if you bought the fight, you got your money's worth. It was worth your time. A lot of drama, a lot of excitement, surprises. Obviously, I mean, Ryan doing what he did, being the big underdog. So, yeah, I mean, it was a heck of a fight. I mean, very dramatic. That's what you want to see. You want to see, if we knew what was going to happen every fight, what would be the fun of that? We thought we knew, but obviously we didn't. And that's not the first time, and it sure as heck won't be the last time.
Absolutely, for sure. And I suppose just how surprising do you think this performance was, considering how everything went into it? There was so much talk about Garcia, obviously himself missing weight. So do you think how much do you think that played into a factor of it being so surprising for the result on Saturday night?
Well, I think it was a big surprise for most people. I mean, even if you were like a diehard Ryan Garcia fan, I think a lot of people might have looked at the fight and said, given everything that had taken place leading up to the fight, given the fact that he was so much over the weight limit for the fight, that to see him put in that kind of performance was a little surprising. But he was able to find a way to thrive in the chaos. I still don't buy for one moment that it was him
Yeah.
trolling, because that's just not true in my opinion. But he was able to summon up what he needed to do at that moment for those 12 rounds to do what he had to do. And it was still a close fight, but obviously with those knockdowns and winning the drama of the fight, so to speak, I mean, he certainly left a big impression on everybody that watched that thing. And I'm happy for him.
For sure. Us previously mentioned there about everything that went into the fight and all sort of I suppose, the antics from Ryan Garcia. Do you think, before the fight, it was very much that, Haney was laser focused, but if you look in hindsight now, do you think some of that played a factor? Because in the build up to the fight week and on fight week, there were strong words coming from Bill Haney, talking sort of crazy stuff about sort of sending Devin in there to kill Ryan Garcia. Do you think that the mind games or maybe the feeling towards Team Haney, towards Garcia, played a factor in I suppose a poor performance of Devin Haney?
I don't think so. And by the way, Ryan Garcia was the one that said he was going to go kill him also. So I mean, they were both
Yeah.
talking that kind of nonsense, which I don't really care for. My personal viewpoint, for anybody to be speaking about that, talking about killing your opponent or death in the ring is not something to joke about. I don't find it to be amusing. I don't find it to be a legitimate way to build up a fight. You can talk shit and you can say what you're going to do and do this and do that, and that's cool. But when you cross the line about death, I have a real problem with that. You can tell me I'm my soapbox. I don't give a shit about that either. Yeah. But I don't think it was really a so-called poor performance from Haney. I feel like he kind of got bamboozled a little bit because he found it so easy to win rounds after the hurt in the first round that he kind of got lulled into, maybe I'm not going to get hit with that hook, or I can deal with the hook because I did it with the first punch. And Ryan did not fight, as they say, 3 minutes every round. What he did was he picked his spots, and then when he found a moment he could explode with the big punches, he was able to do that. And Haney, as he said in his own words, that he kind of slept on the left hook a little bit, and that was a big mistake. But I think when he was just boxing, he boxed very, very well. It's just that they did not take into account, or maybe they didn't take it as seriously as they should have, from the standpoint of thinking that because Ryan was going through all the stuff that was happening in the build-up to the fight, that was going to show in the ring. And obviously, at least for the 12 rounds, it did not. And that's a credit to Garcia to be able to find it, to keep himself together, during the fight, as opposed to all the chaos that went on prior to the fight. And if you watch and look at all the stuff that's been going on with him in the aftermath of the fight, it's going to be a long party. I'll put it to you like that.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that, like, a lot of people now after the fight, and obviously Garcia winning, a lot of the opinion is now, oh, he's played a blinder, he's played the game, it's fooled everyone. But I suppose, from your opinion, it is, that wasn't really the case. There is still those deeper sort of issues there when it comes to Ryan Garcia.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't have to be like a psychiatrist to notice that. And he wasn't, I don't think, even asked about it at the press conference. I don't know if you were there in the room after the press conference, when he was doing his press conference, where he talked about how I spent all week partying. I drank
Yeah.
every night. I drank and drank and drank. I went out Monday night and Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Well, okay. First, and he said, not that I'm proud of it. It's not necessarily I'm saying proud of, but he said that's what he did. It is the type of scenario where that tells me that all the stuff building up to the fight was legit, because clearly if you're talking about how you had to get drunk and fill yourself with alcohol prior to a big important boxing match, that's a real problem. And I'm sure that the drinking was part of the inability that for him not to make 140 pounds. Let's not forget. I mean, I'm not going to shit on his win because it was a great win. I don't take that away. He performed in the ring when it counted. But you cannot talk about that and not also talk about the fact that he did miss weight by over 3 pounds.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah.
Both things can be true at the same time. He did not make the weight. So here's the point about that, Lewis. Devin Haney, like a professional who also suffers to make the weight, made 140 pounds. He had to strip down naked at the closed door weigh-in to make the weight. And so he depleted himself. Ryan Garcia did not deplete himself as much. So he was not as physically compromised by making the weight as his opponent. And that gives you an inherent advantage. Now, why they didn't ask at that moment, even though they cut a deal to make the fight go forward where it was financially motivated, why they didn't seek some sort of Saturday weight check, only the Haney camp can answer. I'm maybe it's because they were going to blow up in weight also, and they didn't think it would be that big of a deal. But if you ask me, it was a big deal. But that's how it goes. You make your decision and you live with it. And so in the aftermath of this fight, Ryan is still going to have similar issues, and if not more issues in my estimation, because now he thinks he can just get away with that type of preparation and he can still go and win the fight. He was able to do it against Haney. And again, don't take anything away from him. But there is not a professional athlete, boxer or otherwise, or a person even in life that can continually do that type of activity and still be at the top level of whatever their job is. In other words, at some point, it catches up to you. Maybe at 25 and being a great athlete like he is, for the time being, he can get away with it. But eventually, the chickens come home to roost, as they say. You cannot burn the candle at both ends for an indefinite period of time without paying the price for it. And when you win a fight like that, it's going to make you think that you can get away with that time and again. It's just a matter of the way things go. I've seen it before. It's not the first time. It's not going to be the last time.
So mentioned there about the weight miss, and you mentioned about the Saturday weigh-in. Eddie Hearn spoke to Boxing News today. I think he spoke to Box Nation as well, and he said, if it was down to him and he was promoting the fight, he would have advised to take the Saturday weigh-in. But I think the concerns from Team Haney was obviously that Haney blows up quite a lot, but also the concern that Garcia may not have taken the fight if he missed the Saturday weigh-in. So sort of, do you think maybe in hindsight now, Team Haney will live to regret not sort of imposing anything to Garcia to not blow up too much on the Saturday?
I mean, I think they had to make a calculated decision. I mean, like you said, there is also the fact that Devin, even though he made the 140, he's going to blow up also, and they didn't want to restrict him to I guess it would have been probably 10 pounds if they followed the normal protocol on those types of second day weigh-ins. I don't think Ryan was going to not do the fight just because they imposed that on him. I mean, they both had a humongous amount of money riding on it. Both guys have been through a camp, whatever you think about the level of how good their camps were. And there was, a lot of people expecting to be there. There's a TV broadcast going on. There's all the undercard. There's a lot of pressure to not blow the fight like that. So I think they probably could have imposed it if they wanted to, but I think there's something to be said, like you mentioned, that they felt like it was also better for Devin to not have to restrict himself also. They just sort of had to roll the dice. And in the end, they paid the price for it.
And you mentioned there about Garcia missing weight. And when you talk about big concerns, is it sort of a concern like this is a guy who fought at lightweight, this time last year, he was continuously fighting at lightweight. And now do you sort of question maybe what his training's been like, what his training was like for this fight? Because obviously in the Duarte fight as well, that was 144. So is there sort of, bigger concerns as well with, him not being able to make a weight that was a division above that he was, the year previously?
Well, he probably just have been fighting in a bigger weight. I mean, boxers, they always try to get down to the lowest possible weight, thinking that it's going to somehow give them this great advantage power-wise in the match. And to me, you get to a certain point where, yeah, that's true sometimes, but you reach a point of diminishing returns. So, and Ryan even made the point when he was doing his post-fight news conference about how, he'd been he'd been in the 140-pound weight class, but he never actually officially made 140 for the fight. Obviously, he made 136 for the Tank Davis fight, where he was, on a catch weight for that particular bout, non-title fight. the reality is like you said, I'm going to be fighting as a welterweight. And he even talked about maybe fighting as a junior middleweight. Mentioned Sebastian Pandora, for example. And there's plenty of other talented fighters in that weight class that he could go in the ring with and make a big event against. So I think we've certainly seen the last of Ryan Garcia even pretending to be a junior welterweight. Certainly not. Obviously going to be back in the 135, obviously, and he'll see him in a new home in the welterweight division. And what will happen, because this is just the way that things happen in boxing all the time, we can go chapter and verse, is when you have a superstar name that finds a division to fight in, the other fighters in and around that weight class gravitate to go there because they want the big opportunity and the big money. So, when Oscar De La Hoya was, who is Ryan's promoter, when he was the big superstar and he went into the welterweight division, suddenly all the guys, were there following him. Same when he went up to the junior middleweight division. We've seen it happen when Canelo has risen in weight over the last few years, that guys gravitate to that weight class. Where the star lands is where the other guys rise to. So if Ryan Garcia goes into what is currently a little bit of a slightly diminished welterweight division, particularly with Crawford moving up and Errol Spence probably moving up, and guys like Sean Porter retiring and Kell Brook retiring, the what was once a massively talented division has been kind of cleaned out to some degree. There's still lots of talent there, like Jaron Ennis and that sort of thing. Yeah. But once Ryan Garcia established himself there, if he does, believe me, there'll be guys. There's a lot of talented fighters at 140 that will find their way in the not too distant future, I would imagine, into that weight class to try to grab onto a big time fight with Garcia.
Definitely. I did want to get your thoughts on the performance from referee Harvey Dock. Came under a lot of criticism. I think people saying the consensus online that Haney was very, very lucky to get through round 7. Obviously, Garcia did have a point deducted on that round for hitting after the break. But do you agree with sort of the public in sort of being disappointed in the performance of the referee?
Look, I've seen Harvey do refereing in big time fights for a long, long time. He's one of the best referees in boxing. I don't think that he had his best night. I think if Harvey watches back the video of the fight, he'd agree with that. Not everybody's gonna have a perfect night. I think by and large, though, I don't think he did a bad job. I put it to you like this on the point deduction as an example. My opinion is that it didn't rise to the level of a deduction. That it would definitely have risen to the level of like a hard warning, like don't do that shit or I'm going to take a point, that type of thing. But it's still within his rights as the referee to take a point because it was a pretty clear, blatant after the break kind of punch. So again, I don't know if I'm the referee. I don't think I would want to see a point taken there, but I get it. And as far as the way he handled the rest of the round, the one thing I'm not critical of whether he should have called knockdowns or not called knockdowns, because to tell you the truth, Lewis, I was back watching like the replays. I couldn't really tell, frankly, if it was a knockdown. It looked like it could have gone either way. And he's standing right there. So I have to defer to the ref on that particular call. What I would have liked to see Harvey do is to be a little more closely looking and calling the holding that Devin Haney was doing. I know he was hurt. He was doing what he tried to do to stay in the fight. But just because a guy's hurt does not give you the right to grab and hold constantly. Now, holding is part of boxing. I don't have a problem with holding strategically here and there. It's when it becomes to the excess that it's a problem. You need to address that as the referee. So it got to a point, at least from my way of looking at it, where Devin was doing enough holding where it absolutely warranted a stern warning, if not eventually a point deduction for the infraction. But from Devin's point of view, if the referee's not going to warn you and not going to take a point away, you do it as long as you can, as long as you can get away with it. I mean, that's the nature of anything. And if there was some other thing that one of the guys was doing that was on the gray side of the rules, and the refs letting you get away with it, you keep doing it until they make you stop. So I can't quarrel with him holding. I just would have liked to seen Harvey take a little bit more of a firmer hold at that moment, and no pun intended, and call the foul.
Definitely, for sure. I suppose moving on from more controversy on the card, the chief support garnered a lot of attention for the scorecards by the end. Arnold Barboza defeating Sean McComb by a split decision. Many in the arena felt like Sean McComb done more than enough to win the fight. Not even me being biased towards a British fighter, but I certainly thought he done more than enough to win. What did you sort of make of the fight?
You don't have to be. You don't have to be British or not British to see who won that fight. That's got nothing to do with what your nationality is, or if you're from Northern Ireland, or you could be from Japan or Africa or Italy or wherever. Barboza got a gift, in my opinion. I thought McComb fought a really good fight. He had a good idea of what to do. He used his length, he used his height, and he won the fight. I mean, when I heard the scores announced, I'm like, okay, if I'm not mistaken, one of the scores was 98-92 in favor of McComb, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, okay, right. And they announced it because it was split decision. So I said 98-92 for McComb. I'm like, okay. I mean, that seemed to be the right score, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And so to see Barboza not only win, but to get two judges to give him the score, one of them was what, 96, 94?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I think one was 97, 93. I'm
97.
not too sure on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
those are just. I would like to like have a conversation with the judge and just like say, dude, what were you watching? What did you see? That was not like in the Haney Garcia fight. Whoever you were scoring the rounds for, I think anybody would argue that that rounds 2 through 6, absolutely you could have scored them for Devin Haney.
yeah.
I mean, I think that even if you didn't score them, you could see a reason why somebody would. I can't see a reason why you're going to find 7 rounds to give to Arnold Barboza in that fight. So to me, look, Arnold was undefeated. He's still undefeated technically after that victory. I thought it was a terrible performance. He should have been sharper. He just fought in January. It's not like he's coming off the big time long layoff. To me, what he showed, which I kind of have suspected, is that, good fighter, solid contender, but not an elite guy in that weight division. And McComb, should have had the victory, would have, potentially changed his career. I mean, but I think now, even with the loss, that a lot of people will look at him and think that he is a guy that can compete in this weight class. And, you hate to get the L on your record, but it should not in any way hurt him from getting some other significant fight. I hope he does get another opportunity because he deserves it.
And when it comes to scoring, like, it is like I suppose like people have conspiracies and they say certain things, but do you think the fact that it's McComb's the away fighter, Barboza's the golden boy fighter, they want to push him. Do you think that stuff plays factor in terms of scoring?
I don't. I just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of these judges for years, talk to them, know them. Not that I socialized with them or anything, but I've had many conversations with them privately about those sorts of things. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'd be a fool to be naive enough to think that that's never happened. But generally speaking, I just don't think that that's the case. Like, there's no huge, like, Barboza is not like the golden child that's on the fast track to some gargantuan fight. He, I'm not trying to knock him. He's just another good, solid guy in the division. If he wins, if he loses, it's not going to make or break a promotion. It's not going to make or break Golden Boy. He's got one fight left with them on the agreement that he signed. I mean, whatever. It's to be quite honest with you, if you have a big popular Irish fighter, that's a bigger deal in terms of commercial elements in boxing. So no, in this particular instance, absolutely, I do not believe that this is a matter of some type of bias or nationalistic behavior or some type of corruption or anything like that. I think it was just, you go into the fight, you kind of feel like who's supposed to win, I guess. And you might shade the rounds for the guy, even if it's maybe, not that close and you're not giving McComb credit. I'm not sure how you can't give him, because the thing about McComb's punches, because he was so much taller and longer, every time he landed a jab, it was pretty clear as day. It wasn't like you could miss those shots. It wasn't like they were, banging away on the inside and it was hard to see what he was landing. His shots were pretty clear cut. So, that was just not a good call.
Absolutely. Just lastly, did want to get your thoughts on, I suppose, the return of Terence Crawford, scheduled for August the 3rd, potentially against Israil Madrimov. Obviously, it's a deal with Matchroom and His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh. Ahead of sort of the card is sort of shaping up to come very nice. We do see Jose Valenzuela taking on Isaac Cruz. Andy Ruiz is returning potentially against Jarrell Miller. Leo Santa Cruz against Abner Reyes in a trilogy, which sort of caused a bit of confusion with people. And just recently, there's a potential fight between Virgil Ortiz and Tim Tszyu in the works of that card as well. So scheduling for a massive card in LA on August the 3rd.
Yeah, well, a couple things about that. Number one, Crawford Madrimov is done. That fight's happening. Yeah. It's not a possibility. That fight will be announced at their news conference on Wednesday. In terms of other fights, the Jarrell Miller fight that you mentioned against Andy Ruiz, that is agreed to, but it's not signed yet. They're still kind of going over a couple of things. For example, unclear as they negotiate the fighter points. Is it a 10-round fight? Is it a 12-round fight? Whatever. But I suspect that they'll get that done. The Abner Mares and Santa Cruz fight, that one I'm not so sure about. Yeah, I mean, if it does happen, I mean, nothing against my boys Leo and Abner, but I just don't. What's the point of that? I mean, come on. Yeah. Other than Al trying to get his guys paid on their send-off fights and using somebody else's money to do so in His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh. And what was the other fight you mentioned in there? Oh, about
Tszyu against Virgil Ortiz, apparently.
Yeah, that one. Look, I mean, Virgil, you can't go making plans for June. For August, just yet, because Virgil has a fight coming up on Saturday that he's going to be the big favorite to win against Thomas Delorme. but you just you never can tell. But we'll see. I mean, listen, obviously, if Tim Tszyu and Virgil Ortiz do end up having a fight with each other, that's a really good, interesting fight in that weight class for sure. Those are two of the more interesting and entertaining guys and talented guys in the 154-pound division. So I'd love to see that. I'm not entirely convinced that will be the case, but I'd love to see that matchup. The heavyweight fight probably will happen. Crawford Madrimov, I get that fight because it's an opportunity for Crawford to go and win a title in another division with an available title holder. And Madrimov, even though he doesn't have the kind of experience that Terence Crawford does, he's obviously very talented. He looked very good when he won the title against Kurbanov back not that long ago. So that'll be, and look, when they first the thought of that fight was going to happen, and I wrote about it and others wrote about it, that they had made the deal.
Yeah.
Some people were questioning, well, that's not really that big of a fight. I'm like, listen, first of all, not every fight's going to be a mega fight. But if the Saudis and Riyadh Season and Turkey Al Sheikh are involved, one thing I'm very confident in, based on what we've seen in the events that they have so far done and what's on the schedule coming up with Usyk and Fury, and obviously with Beterbiev and Bivol in the 5-on-5, one thing you can be sure about is there's going to be a very strong and quality undercard. And if these fights that they're planning on that we're talking about come about, then that lends to that, because these are interesting. Put Morris and Santa Cruz aside, although from a ticket point of view, they have popularity in the LA area, so that may help sell some tickets. But I mean, Ruiz, Gerald Miller, I mean, it's not the biggest heavyweight fight in the world, but there'll be a fun, sloppy fight. Let's be honest. We know that.
Yeah, for sure. Also, Pitbull against Valenzuela as well.
Oh, and Pitbull against Valenzuela. Look, that's the kind of thing where I love that, because it's Pitbull Cruz, who's becoming one of the more popular and exciting fighters in the sport, staying busy, right? He just fought. I mean, in a lot of times you'd think, okay, we just saw him. He's not going to be back in the ring for another 8 months, 10 months, a year. Well, he's getting right back in the groove, which tells me if he's fighting August and he just fought, he'll probably have at least a third fight towards the end of the year. So to me, an active champion like that against Valenzuela, who's, a pretty solid opponent, that makes for a very, interesting fight to me. I think the fans will like that one for sure if it happens, if it gets done.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I definitely would like that ourselves. As we do close this off, Dan, as always, do like to give a shout out to the podcast and the Substack. So if you want to give it a plug, feel free to do so now.
Yeah, just go and hit your browser up to danrafael.substack.com, and you can punch your email address in, and you get all of my posts. And we welcome all comers to read the material. Appreciate it. And also the podcast, like you mentioned, twice a week, Thursday night into Friday, Sunday night into Monday. Got my Canelo Alvarez interview coming up pretty soon. Prior to his big fight. We have a great time doing that. So I hope everyone will listen on all of your podcast platforms.
Absolutely, for sure. Dan, as always, thank you for taking time to speak to me. Always good to catch up with. And hopefully we'll be catching up very soon to cover some mega fights, mate. Top man.
Appreciate it, Lewis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.